Hey everybody, it's Amanda.
And Rick.
And it's time for our evening Bible study.
Chapter 25. 25 tonight. Got the notification. We are, in fact, live.
It worked.
On YouTube. Not the first time.
No, this is not the first time we're live on YouTube. You're right about that. In fact, we have like 900 videos now, don't we? Somewhere close to that?
In the 800s. Close to 9.
Mm-hmm.
You said that we would not finish the chapter tonight.
Oh, I sincerely doubt that.
44 verses, probably not. You are right.
Not. 44 verses. I sometimes doubt if we'll get through 4 verses. In fact, this one, I don't even know if we'll get through the first one. We'll see how that works. But, you know, it's a good chapter. I'm going to read the whole chapter, though, just so you know. I'm going to read. I'm still sharing the links, so give me a minute. But
read it all, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's other than the first verse.
Take my shoes off for that.
Yeah, it's one big story. So I was looking to see if there was a place that I could split it up neatly,
but and you cannot.
I just couldn't find one. So I'm just going to read it and probably read it again tomorrow, and we'll see what we can do. But it's a really good story, and I think there's a lot of good lessons to be learned from it. So just give me a moment to.
And we all are.
Share these links, and we'll get started in just a minute.
We are kind of getting close to the end of the book. I agree with you that we've really spent a long time in 1 Samuel.
Yeah, we're getting to the end of it, though.
You know what I think it is?
What?
When you do the epistles, many of the epistles are rather short. So the books kind of fly by.
Yeah.
We did Ruth, and that was short. That flew by.
Mm-hmm.
You get to some of these Old Testament books, and they're kind of lengthy.
Mm-hmm.
1 Samuel's taken a while. I wonder how long it'll be when we actually get to like Isaiah, something like that.
Or Psalms.
Psalms going to take a while.
It'll be like all the rest of 2022. But, you know, it's going to be good. It's all good, right? Okay. I actually shared the links already. I was quick today. Facebook cooperated. Very nice. We're not even at 3 minutes, and I'm happy. So how about I just go ahead and read since we have a lot to read? Everybody cool with that? Good. 1 Samuel 25, starting at verse 1. We're going to go all the way to the end of the chapter. I'm prepping myself. All right. It says, starting verse 1, and Samuel died, and all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented him, and buried him in his house at Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. And there was a man in Mon whose possessions were in Carmel, and the man was very great. And he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabel, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding, and of a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep, and David sent out 10 young men, and David said unto the young men, Get you up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall ye say to him that liveth in prosperity, Peace be both to thee, and peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. And now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Wherefore let the young men find favor in thy eyes, for we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh to thine hand unto thy servants and to thy son David. And when David's young men came, they spake to Nabal according to all the words in the name of David, and ceased. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There be many servants nowadays that break away, every man from his master. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers, and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be? So David's young men turned their way and went again, and came and told him all those sayings. And David said unto his men, Gird ye on every man his sword. And they girded on every man his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed on them. But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. They were a wall unto us both by night and day, all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master, and against all his household, for he is such a son of Belial, that a man cannot speak to him. Then Abigail made haste, and took 200 loaves, and 2 bottles of wine, and 5 sheep ready dressed, and 5 measures of parched corn, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. And she said unto her servants, Go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. And it was so, as she rode on the ass, that she came down by the covert of the hill. And behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. Now David had said, Surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed out of all that pertained unto him, and he hath requited me evil for good. So and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave of all that pertained to him by the morning light any that pisseth against the wall. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted, and lighted off the ass, and fell before David on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and fell at his feet, and said, Upon me, my lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not my lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my lord whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies, and they that seek evil to my lord, be as Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my lord a sure house, because my lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee, and to seek thy soul. But the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God, and the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dwelt well with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid. And David said to Abigail, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me. And blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which hast kept me this day from coming to shed blood, and from avenging myself with mine own hand. For in very deed, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, which hath kept me back from hurting thee, except thou hasted and come to meet me, surely there had not been any left unto Nabal by the morning light, any that pisseth against the wall. So David received of her hand that which she had brought him, and said unto her, Go up in peace to thine house. See, I have hearkened to thy voice, and have accepted thy person. And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king, and Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing less or more until the morning light. But it came to pass in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. And it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord, that hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. For the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. And when the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spake unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife. And she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth and said, Behold, let thine handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. And Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her. And she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Phalti, the son of Laish, which was in Galim. So there you go. You have this whole story of Abigail, Nabal, and David. So let me give you the short version. So first of all, this chapter starts with the death of Samuel, which we'll talk about that briefly. But basically, the point of that story is, and the one thing that's mentioned is that all of Israel gathered together to mourn him, which is significant in its own right. But then you have the story of David. So David and his men had gone out into this wilderness at Moab, and they had been around this man Nabal, all of his shepherds. You know, they were out there with the shepherds, helping them keep an eye on the sheep, protecting them. So the servants mentioned that they were like a wall to them by night, and they protected them during the day, and they were kind to everyone. And the whole time they were there, they were not stealing any of the sheep or the goats or anything. They were simply being kind and gracious and helping them. But at some point they had need of some food. And so they said, well, you know, we've been helping this guy Nabal. Let's go see if he would mind, you know, helping us out and giving us a little bit, since he has so much. You know, it's not like he's suffering for anything. Let's see if he'll help. So he sends some messengers and he says, you know, tell him it's me, David. You know, he should know who David is. So he sends these young men out, and they go to meet Nabal. And they kind of explain the circumstances. And he's like, who's David? I don't care nothing about no David. I ain't helping him with a thing. And, you know, just as unkind in that way. And so, of course, the young men return and tell David. And David's like, everybody get a sword. And he's basically going to avenge himself against Nabal. And he threatens that. And I personally don't like repeating the term that David uses. It's very, you know, masculine fighting words. Basically, he said he's not going to leave any men, the ones that go to the bathroom against the wall. You know, he's not going to leave any of the men. They're all going to die. But of course, one of the servants tells Abigail, his wife, and she knows her husband likes to run off at the mouth and get himself into some trouble. So she immediately sets off to fix it. She doesn't even tell her husband. She just gathers a bunch of stuff. She's like, man, what's this dude doing to me? You know, she's like, gets all the stuff, gathers it, sends it on some donkeys ahead of her, tells the guys that she's going to meet them, and they're supposed to take all this food over to David. And then she rushes back behind them and meets David in the road. And she goes before him and she says, let's see. I'm trying to find where it begins here. So she hasted. She jumped off the donkey that she was on. She fell down on her face before David, bowed herself to the ground, and she's like, blame me. You know, it's my fault. I didn't see the guys when they came. My husband, I know how he is. I should have made sure that everything was okay. Blame me for all of this. Don't lay it in anybody's else's blame. It's all me. He's like, and she's like, you know what? The Lord allowed me to come here to stop you from coming to shed blood and avenging yourself against your own enemies, which, remember, the whole reason that David had not hurt Saul was because he was going to leave all of that to the Lord, right? And that's why he was blessed. So that wouldn't have been good for him to go and avenge himself. In fact, you made the point, I thought was like the best point you made last night, that what made the difference between his situation with Saul and his situation with Goliath was, with Goliath, he was slaying Goliath in defense of God and his honor. And he refrained from slaying Saul when it was about his personal honor. You know what I mean? So that's why it would have been a bad circumstance here. So anyway, she begs him to forgive her. And she acknowledges that the Lord has a plan for David, that he's going to be king, you know, that he's blessing him, that all of his enemies have been destroyed. Excuse me. And she understands that, like, there's nothing that's going to happen that the Lord doesn't have control over. But she knows that David, there's a plan for the Lord for David, and she just asks him that he just is forgiving and remembers her when he's in leadership. And so David replies to her, and he's like, you know what? Praise the Lord that you came, because I was bent on destroying people, and that would have been wrong for me. But the Lord allowed you to come and stop me from doing that. So I'm going to take what you've offered. Thank you very much. Go ahead to your house. I'm listening to you, and I've accepted what you have to say. Right? So Abigail went back home, and her husband, who was, couldn't give anything to David, decided to hold himself a big feast and got drunk. And so she didn't even discuss it with her husband that night because he wasn't in the frame of mind to have that discussion. So she waited till the next morning when he didn't have any alcohol in him so she could explain to him what had happened. And then when she explained it to him, he had a heart attack. And 10 days later, he died. Was that an accident? No. Again, I think the Lord was avenging David. David refrained from avenging him, so the Lord avenged him. So, of course, David hears that Nabal is dead, and he even says, "Blessed be the Lord, who's pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal." It's like the Lord is taking care of it, and I didn't need to mess with it. So he sent for and communed with Abigail. He sent for her and talked to her, and realized that he was interested in marrying her. So he went and sent for her, and she became his wife, and she was very thankful to do it. She was very humble about it, said that she wanted to just wash people's feet, and she became his wife. So David also took another wife. Again, we've mentioned it before, but I think it's worth saying again, that this is another one of those times where people in the Bible do have multiple wives. It's not the Lord putting his stamp of approval on it. It was not his plan, but this is just stating the facts. He had 2 wives. Mm-hmm. He took 2 of them. And it also explained what happened to Michal, his previous wife, and Saul had given her to be someone else's wife. So she wasn't even his wife anymore. So he just has Ahinoam and Abigail, and this is the tale of how Abigail really showed herself to be a wise woman, and as such, the Lord got rid of the husband who was foolish and bringing her down, and gave her to David to be a king's wife, which I think is significant in its own right, but also gave David a wife of wisdom, So anyway, all right, so that is the entire story. Like I said, there's so many verses, I sincerely doubt we'll get through all that tonight, but we are heading back to verse 1, which I assume you do want to talk about the death of Samuel at least a moment. Mm-hmm. Okay. Richard Beale.
No.
Richard Beale.
So this is 1 Samuel. We will read 2 Samuel. Mm-hmm. But here in chapter 25, Samuel dies.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was really all 1 Samuel. They just had it on 2 scrolls.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I was telling the people. They might not
You're
know.
fine. Thumbs up. I got you. I just want to say that it's the Lord doesn't waste words. It's not unfeeling or uncaring, but mm-hmm. Samuel had a big part, especially at the beginning of this book, mm-hmm. and yet it is summed up with a few words, and Samuel died. Mm-hmm. I wrote down that, folks, we really ought to stay humble, always, at all times. It's not that the Lord doesn't love us. He loves us greatly. Mm-hmm. But we are servants. And when it comes to the end of our life and our time is up, God's work continues. Mm-hmm. So the Lord will call us home, and there'll be a brief time. People that you have cared about, who you've invested your life in, they will, of course, grieve for you. Mm-hmm. But life continues. And that's just the plan of things. So life continued after Samuel, just like life continued after Moses and so on. Abraham.
It's funny you mentioned Moses, because when I was looking at the different commentaries, mm-hmm. they mentioned that there had been no one more respected since Moses than mm-hmm. Samuel, and that it was amazing that all of Israel gathered together to mourn him. and that very few things united the whole of Israel. But being sad over the loss of Samuel was one, which, I mean, that's a tremendous testimony, because I think of like in modern times, the comparison would be like Billy Graham. And it's not even the same thing, but I do remember when he died, it was like televised, his funeral, and it was like a big deal because he had served our country and served the Lord for so long. But, something like that, it's significant.
I'll say this: people in ministry sometimes get a lot of criticism. And the funny thing is, funny, strange, although we understand it, because Satan's at work. But the more faithful you are to the Bible, many times the more criticism you get. The more straightforward you teach and preach, the more people kind of, will say things. But still, there's a tremendous impact on good Bible teaching, preaching, and just being faithful to the Lord. The reason that people lamented, the reason that the nation gathered, the reason that people grieved was because Samuel was he was the real deal. He was so when he left the scene, there was a loss, and that's really what it is. When you are genuine and you encourage people because of your genuine walk, not that you have a lot of flattery words, but that your life is just so right on that it encourages people. When you are no longer there, there's a void, and people do grieve. And I'm just stating the obvious. But you brought up Billy Graham. And I remember after he died, and of course that's a modern day example. But for decades he was a gospel preacher. He didn't preach everything in the Bible. He preached the gospel. He was an evangelist. Like he even said in a message, an evangelist has a single message. Now he may preach on prayer, but he directs it to the cross. He may preach on the love of God, but it's with the understanding that he is going to end it on the cross. The fact that Billy Graham's preaching, along with many evangelists, is about seeing people hear about Christ, know what Christ did for them, and give people an opportunity to trust him. That's the job of an evangelist, to be a soul winner, to be a witness, many times on a public platform or stage or podium, to lead people to Christ. That's what he did for years and years and years. And when he went home to be with the Lord, there was a void. And I remember right afterwards, I grieved a little, because it's like, wow, you know what I mean? It was like he held that position for a long time, and then when he leaves, it's like someone else has got to step up. There's a sadness. You almost feel like the world just got a little darker. Because people, there was someone else who quit. Was not here to share the light. Of course, there are many people sharing the light, but you get my point. There's a grieving that hits you when somebody who has faithfully served the Lord goes home to be with the Lord. You're happy. Hopefully, you understand that we're joyful that someone is now with the Lord. Like people say they've graduated. I like that way of saying it. People say they have graduated to their heavenly reward or something, talking about them going home. I like that way of looking at dying, because for the believer, it's not a sad thing. It's really a joyful thing. It's like going home, and that's what it is, really. And but anyway, I was just I don't want to ramble too long, but that was like a national thing. There was a pastor who died that I never knew personally, but I knew him enough that he seemed more like a somebody that was more like a small town preacher, and he was more like a father figure to a lot of people. And when he passed, it was I saw it as more of a like a small church grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you have the national,
Like a family.
yeah, you have the national preacher, and he goes, and there's like a nation grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the small town preacher, and then you have this little church family grieving. I remember when the preacher who preached the night I got saved, when he passed last year, and that hit me kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very thankful that I was able to sit in one of his sermons and hear the gospel, because that was the night I got saved. So I was thankful for that. But he was a very faithful night after night gospel preacher. And then when he died, I thought, you know, now I'm in prayer for, like, we need some more soldiers to go out, because the battle's still raging.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I'm rambling with no points, but I really just say that when believers go,
Mm-hmm.
we're joyful for them, because now they're on the other side with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have a sense of loss here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I guess the term would be bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're joyful for them, but now, you know, the work still continues on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the time for us to back up. That's the time for us to thank the Lord that we were able to know them and be encouraged by them, and now seek to go the extra mile and serve even with more fervent spirit.
You know, it's really interesting to me, and it just struck me as you were talking about this. And it started with what you said at the beginning, when you talked about this being First and Second Samuel, or the two books we're reading. And I said, well, it was really one book, but it was in two scrolls, and that's the whole reason, the First and Second Samuel. But you know, it's interesting to me. I thought about it. It's like Samuel dies in the middle of it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of odd that the whole thing is named after Samuel, but then when you really think about it, it actually is significant, and that's why it's mentioned here, because this whole First and Second Samuel is about Samuel's impact.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It started with his birth, right, and the significance of that, but it plays out all the way through these books. He's already gone. He's gone now, but his impact will continue. And in fact grow, because I mean, out of this is David, and you know, all the things that come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an encouragement too. Yeah, everybody mourns, and they talk about it here, and that's why it's mentioned is a big deal. But this whole section is named after him because his impact was beyond his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of these things were rooted in who Samuel is. You know, Samuel was the leader who was praying and helped Saul through his turbulent time.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel was the leader who went and anointed David and brought him about and helped him be the person that, you know, he needed to be. So it's really, when you think about it, you can see a lot of times we think that our life might not have that much impact. I bet Samuel thought, you know, when he's hanging out at his house at Ramah, that he wasn't really doing much. You know what I mean? Because I mean, he'd already left Saul. He wasn't with the king anymore. He was disappointed of Saul's failures. So he probably didn't realize how much of an impact that he was going to have in his lifetime. And yet we have, looking back, this picture of the great impact that was bigger than his lifetime. And honestly, I feel like we all should realize that our impact is going to be much bigger than what we see just in our little lifetime. And that can be for the good or for the bad.
Mm-hmm.
But we have the ability to make an impact. And hopefully it would be like Samuel's.
Mm-hmm. People in ministry will like she's talking about the word impact. You'll impact many people if you devote your life to God's work.
Mm-hmm.
You have Samuel here, and he impacted the life of Saul, and he impacted the life of David,
which impacted all of Israel.
Yeah. So, but you have two men here, Saul and David, and really the man in the middle for a long time here was Samuel. And it's very true. When you are involved in ministry, we talk about a small world. You will be probably many times in the midst of all kinds of things. Sometimes drama. Sometimes like ministry opportunities where people get saved and taught, trained, discipled. I mean, it's all kinds of things.
Mhm.
The Lord will take you through. But many times it's the folks in ministry who are usually in the midst of everything.
Mhm.
I mean, you just read the Bible. There are many examples of people who they were just in the middle of all of it. Talk
In a
about
supporting role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that sometimes we think ministry. Sometimes we forget, like I saying the other night, that sometimes we think the Bible talks about separation, but sometimes we go to the extreme and we think isolation.
Mhm.
But separating from the world's sin is not isolating ourselves from every person.
Mhm.
In fact, we are to be in the midst of the people, like the Lord. He ate with sinners. He put himself right in the midst of the people to teach and to preach.
Mhm.
And that's what we need to do.
Mhm.
We're not to go along with their sin and live a sinful lifestyle, but we are to immerse
Oh.
ourselves in the people, you know? And seriously, I mean, if somebody was going to start a church, I'm not, I understand land and everything and pray about it and such. But if I was going to pick a place to start a church in a new town that didn't have a church, I wouldn't start a church up here or over here or down here or over here in the back of, where no one knows where it is. I'd put it right in the center of town. Just right there and plop it down. Plop right where all the people are. Open the doors wide and start inviting everybody in. And I'll tell you that's many times where the Lord will take you if you get involved in ministry. Samuel, he dealt with everybody, and people in ministry deal with everybody. And I'm not talking about just pastors. I'm talking about all of us. If you start to tell people about the Lord and start to try to help people along in their Bible study and everything, you'll meet all kinds of people, So anyway. All rambles, I admit it. I'm a rambler tonight. Call me. Who was that? No, that was a gambler. What was his
Kenny
name?
Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. That was the gambler. For some reason I thought it was the rambler.
Anyway. All right.
I'm the rambler.
Verses 2 and 3 introduce us to two people, Nabel and Abigail. And it gives us a description of both of them. So you have Nabel. It says he was a man whose possessions were in Carmel. And so his very large possessions, everything was very great. He had 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. And then it talks about his wife. It says his name was Nabel, talks about his wife for a minute. And then it talks a little bit about his character. It says he was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. Now, I just want to talk to you about the word churlish as it is defined here. That word, it means hard, cruel, obstinate, stubborn, stiff-necked. That's the kind of description it has. And then it says evil in his doings. The idea that he was just his behavior was wicked. He was not trying to follow the Lord or do right, but he had a lot. And that was probably part of the reason why he felt like he could be that way. Now, on the other hand, he had a wife, and her name was Abigail. We see in verse 3. And it says she was a woman of good understanding. And when you look at the definition there, it's the idea that she was intelligent. She was a smart woman. And she was also lovely to look at. She had a beautiful countenance. Mm-hmm. So all we know about Abigail is that she was a smart, beautiful woman married to a very rich man who was stubborn and not doing the things that he should and just difficult. So those are the two characters that we meet.
I mean, that's even being gentle. When the Lord says boldly evil in his doings, a rich man, I'm picturing almost like a Old Testament gangster.
I think
You
he
know?
must have had some kind of redeeming quality, being that Abigail was an intelligent woman and she was married to him. I'm trying to be generous. I think maybe as he'd gotten richer, he'd gotten worse. You know what I mean? I just find it hard to believe Abigail would have married someone who was always like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because no woman wants to marry some dude who's just mean and nasty and rude.
I know, but in the culture, sometimes marriages were just weren't.
Do you think it was a business transaction?
Well, I mean,
Could have been.
something
Could have been.
something more similar to that.
Mhm.
You know, I think all of us know enough culture and history
Mhm.
to know that marriages aren't always done the Hallmark way.
True.
So
But
I mean,
it's the way that she handles the situation. Maybe it's because she was a woman of good understanding. I just
And
feel like she must have cared.
and you can also say that this is just a snippet
Mhm.
in their life.
Mhm.
This isn't the whole story of their marriage.
Mhm.
This is a little snippet.
Yeah.
And you can almost, at least it's reasonable to assume, since the Lord is involved in everyone's life,
Mhm.
that the fact that this woman ended up being this man's wife is really the mercy of God.
To help him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say that this wasn't the Lord trying to get the man's heart?
Yeah.
And he just had a stubborn heart that would not
Yeah.
turn.
Didn't appreciate that lovely wife.
I'm the Lord sheds light on everybody. He sends rain on the just and the unjust,
Mhm.
and every atheist in this world right now, the Holy Spirit is trying to get a hold of. There is no one on this planet right now that the Lord is not trying to turn to direct them to Himself.
Mhm.
Okay, the Lord wants everybody.
Well, you can see that the Lord was good to him in spite of his wickedness.
Just the
Because
fact that he had a wife like her.
yeah, and also he had every good thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people probably really envied his life.
And it's the goodness of God that brings
Brings man
people
to
to
repentance,
repentance.
exactly.
So that was based on Romans 2.
Mhm. So yeah, so the Lord has definitely been good to him. There's no question about it. And there's that. So anyway, so
But that stands to reason. So we can make a point that the Lord has been very good to him. That having a wife like her and having the possessions and everything is definitely God's blessing on his life. But then you see his attitude toward everything,
so ungrateful.
and you can make a point to say that really represents many people today.
Mhm.
There are many people who have an abundance of blessing.
Yep.
They cannot say that God has not been good to them,
Mhm.
yet they refuse to accept God. There are a lot of people, they say, give me blessings, but they don't really want the God of the blessing.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people are like that.
Mhm.
A lot of people have talents and all kinds of skills and possessions and this, that, and the other, positions of authority and things.
Mhm.
And it's direct blessing of the Lord, yet they refuse to acknowledge that it's the Lord that gave it to them. So anyway.
Well, verse 4, you see where David comes into the story. So he heard.
And I'll say this also. Evil in his doings.
Mhm.
We're told in the Bible several times that we need to be thankful. We need to praise the Lord. We need to understand that blessings come from the Lord. So you want to talk about sin and everything. Folks, do you realize that the Lord blesses all of us just like he blessed this man? And when we don't acknowledge that it's God who gave it to us, when we don't honor God with his blessings that he's given us,
Mhm.
when we hoard it and keep it for ourselves,
Mhm.
the Bible talks about how we are to meet other people's needs and be a blessing to others. When we hoard the blessings and refuse to give God credit and glory,
Mhm.
we're being evil in our doings.
Mm.
Okay, we're going, give me mine, and we're like those selfish children that you see in sandboxes and stuff that want to keep the pail and the little shovel for themselves and not share it. So understand that when the Lord blesses us and we refuse to say thank you, when we refuse to share it with someone else, when we just take it and run and isolate ourselves and think we did it, we're being just as evil as this fellow here.
Well, Ellis said what they have, they think they worked for it. I imagine that he did feel that way, since he is out there sharing his sheep. He's not leaving that to his servants. He probably feels like, I earned this.
Yeah. But you know something? There's a good way of thinking about that and a bad way. I believe a believer can, to a point, say, look at what we have here, and I worked, and now we have this. The Bible talks about a man who doesn't work, that he's worse than an infidel. That a man needs to work to support his family. You know what I mean? The Lord blesses work. But here's the point that I'm making, because I'm not being a heretic here. I'm saying that's another area that we need to acknowledge and thank the Lord in.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we have a house, and I worked,
but
so
the Lord
we
blessed.
have this house. Mm-hmm. But who gave you the job? Who gave you the strength to go to the job?
And who gave you the house?
You follow? Sometimes the Lord doesn't just say, here's a house, plop, right down in front of you. What the Lord does is he gives you the strength to work, the know-how to perform tasks, a position of employment, and he gives you a kind of a boost and a push, and you work, and the Lord blesses, and there's the fruit of it. Now you have a place to live, a home, a house, a house key. You know what I mean? Many times we don't have the blessing, plop, but the Lord gives us all the tools that we need in order to get to where we want to go. So sometimes we only thank the Lord for this, but we need to thank the Lord all along the way. Is really the point that I was making. The Lord gives us the strength to work. Okay, so you can say, hey, I worked for it, but you have to understand that, but you know what? It wasn't my strength. I did it in the Lord's strength.
Yes.
Because I was so tired, I couldn't have gotten it done if the Lord hadn't gotten behind me and said, here, Rick, I give you a little push. So it's always acknowledging the Lord is what I'm saying. Yes. I wasn't going down.
I know how you meant it.
I was just being wordy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Wordy. It's all part of that rambler.
So David hears.
Yeah, knowing to hold him.
That Nabel is out shearing his sheep. And they have some needs. So he gets a couple of guys together. And he's like, listen, I want you to go see Nabel. Greet him in my name, right? And here's what I want you to do. I want you to go be respectful to him. I want you to give some blessings to him. He says, peace be to thee, to your house, unto all that you have. And he's like, let him know that we've been helping out as shepherds. And we haven't touched a single thing. We haven't hurt anything. We haven't taken, there's nothing missing. And he can ask the young men all about it. But if he has, it says, if we find favor in your eyes, it's like if it's okay with you, and if we've come in a good day, would you please be able to give us something, to help us out so that we can eat, right? And so, that's what the young men do. They go and they talk to Nabel and they give him that whole speech. And Nabel, of course, gives that response. Who's David? Who's the son of Jesse? Like, he means nothing. This dude is nothing to me. And you can see Nabel's arrogance, because it's not like people didn't know who David was. It's not like he literally did not know who David was. People knew who David was. The problem is he just didn't respect him, right? And he's like, so what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just give my stuff to any person that comes along and I don't even know nothing about you? So he totally rejects giving them anything. Now, David being who David was, he should have known who he was, and he should have been willing to help him. But even if he'd have been a complete stranger, if you go back to the law, right, you remember in the law that you're supposed to help people, strangers that come to your house, right? That you're supposed to at least give them some bread and some water. He's refusing them even bread and water, right? And so in essence, he is going against the law. And so David is responding with, everybody get a sword because I'm gonna kill every man out there. And on one hand, you could say possibly that, he's trying to correct a wrong, but David even admits later that he's just trying to avenge himself because this guy has offended him.
Mhm.
But really his behavior, and this goes back to the idea of he's harsh and evil. He is harsh in the way that he worded it. And his doings are evil because they're completely against God's word. He doesn't respect David. He doesn't respect him as God's chosen man. He doesn't respect him as a human being. And he doesn't respect the Lord in that he's not honoring his word and doing what he's supposed to be doing, even though the Lord's blessing him. So
I kind of, in my mind, I'm picturing where Jesus told about the rich man and Lazarus.
mhm,
Lazarus was a beggar
mhm,
at the gate.
Yeah.
And then you had a rich man who, it says, he fared sumptuously.
mhm,
Did I say that right? And that kind of thing. And,
Mhm.
and the rich man in the tale that Jesus told was just hard-hearted
mhm,
and with no compassion. And of course, that was not commended by God.
mhm,
We are to have compassion on one another and care. And I like how you pointed out the law. Understand that, I mean, this hadn't been too long after they were given the law.
mhm,
And the fact of the matter is, the people did know who David was, and they knew where David was getting his victories from.
mhm,
Even the king, who wanted him dead for a long time,
mhm,
acknowledged that God was the one giving him the victories.
mhm,
So this is David, the one who's walking with the Lord.
mhm.
And he's the one that's making a request here. And then in addition to that, you have the additional fact of the law.
Mhm.
So it's not really a stretch to say this rich man here was really shaking his fist at God,
Mhm.
doing more or less what we said a moment ago. The idea that I worked for this is mine.
Mhm.
Who am I to give this to another? This
Mhm.
is mine. Tell him to go get his own,
Mhm.
kind of thing. Very, and of course, very ungodly, selfish attitude. That's all that I had at that point.
Abigail, and when she speaks, which we'll get to in a second, she knew who David was.
Mm-hmm.
She understood not just who David was. She knew the Lord was blessing him. She knew that he was going to be king. And at the time, women weren't privy to the same kind of information that the men were. You know what I mean? So for Abigail to understand who David is, clearly Nabal had to have understood who he was.
And also, is it really stretched to say maybe he wasn't saying so much like, who is David, to more or less saying, who is David to me?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know what I mean?
Who are you? Nothing. Yeah, it's just disrespectful. Ellis says
It's like and I know this is going to rub people the wrong way, but do you realize whoever occupies the White House is our president?
Mhm,
And there are times that there's someone in the White House that I approve of,
mhm,
and there are times that someone's in the White House that I don't approve of.
mhm,
But regardless of my approval,
mhm.
he's still my president.
Correct.
So you do have people who say, "Oh, that's not my president," but that's really a cocky, arrogant statement, because the reality is
That's who the Lord made your president.
he is your president.
That's right.
So a similar idea here with Nabal.
Mhm,
Who is David? Who is David to me?
Mhm.
He's nothing to me. He's never done anything for me.
mhm.
That kind of thing.
Ella said, doesn't David come off as slick too? Like, don't you know who I am? I don't think David comes across that way. I do think he does assume that everybody knows who he is, which, it makes sense. If you're someone who's in leadership and you introduce yourself to people, it'd be like, he's not the king, but he was one of the second in command.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be like Kamala Harris, who's a vice president. If she came in and said, and I probably pronounced her name wrong, forgive me if I did, but if she came in and introduced herself, it'd be like someone being disrespectful to her. And it's like, all right, you know who she is. She's the vice president. You got to be respectful to her.
At this point, David is not the king, but it's more or less been told
Yeah, the
that
people were
it's coming.
singing.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Like when someone gets elected here, and they're not yet the president, but they won
that's
the
a good way of putting
election,
it. Yeah,
so
yeah.
they're the president elect.
Yeah.
They already have authority, just not the authority, but they're getting all their people together, they're getting organized, they're getting ready, and they're getting ready to take it. That's kind of David's like the king elect. He's already got people with him, and he's got the nation supporting him. And he may not have the title, but he does have a certain amount of leadership. So I can see how someone will say he's like name dropping here, but at the same time, I think I don't necessarily believe there was evil intent here.
Yeah, I don't think he's shoving it in anybody's face.
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
It's like I've worked jobs before where the boss wants something done, but he doesn't have time to come tell us, so he tells somebody to come tell us, and then the person will say, and he'll mention the boss by name. Well, he said that this needs to be done. Well, the person who came to deliver the message is really just like the mailman. He's just delivering the message, but we're doing it because the message came from the boss, and he sent some middlemen here, messengers, kind of to tell him. But David does have authority, and the momentum is definitely behind him. And that's all I'll say. I honestly don't believe that there's evil intent here, because up to this point, reading about David, there hasn't been. All right, David has been really in the hand of God since we first started reading about him here. So with that being said, I'll assume that David was really at this point just trying to make sure that his men were taken care of. The fact that they were doing a service to Nabel and his people, so they're asking here for him to do a service to them, that kind of thing.
All right, so verses 14 to 17 is where Abigail hears about what happened. It says, so we have
not to mention when somebody, if they go and they don't mention David, then they would almost be like robbers. Gimme. But by saying David,
well, you do have to name your leader.
Well, my point. That's my point. By saying David, Nabel can understand that this dealing is between me, Nabel, and David.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like there's this multitude of people coming in like locusts. They're going to take everything I got. This is me and David. David's come to me, and they're coming to him almost as if David himself has come. Yeah. They are messengers, essentially. Go ahead. I'll get my coffee.
Abigail gets told. So the young man goes to Abigail because they know this problem needs to be solved. In fact, he tells them that David sent the messengers, and Nabel, it says, railed on them. So apparently he yelled at them and really was harsh with them. And then they say, but the men were really good to us, and they didn't hurt us. We never missed anything. When we talked to them, we were in the field. They were a wall by day and by night. We were with them keeping the sheep. She just tells them they were just so good to us. And he said, no, think about how you can help us. He says, because evil is determined against our master and against all the household. For he, I just think it's crazy how he says this. For he is such a son of Belial. You can almost hear his frustration. He's like, that a man can't speak to him. Like what a fool. He is just focused on wickedness and all of this, his selfishness. And it's like, he's going to cause everybody to get hurt. Can you please help us with this circumstance? And Abigail's the only one he knows who can help.
We can continue.
Oh. So let's see. So Abigail hurries. So she makes haste. And she gathers a bunch of food. Just 200 loaves, 2 bottles of wine, 5 sheep dressed, 5 measures of corn, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 cakes of figs. Put them on donkeys.
When there's a need to be met, Be fast about it.
Oh, for sure.
Be quick about it.
And generous.
Sometimes when people are in need,
Mm-hmm.
we have the right motivation and we really honestly have a desire to help. Only problem is
Mm-hmm.
when people really have a need, they have it now.
Mm-hmm.
And we have we want to meet that need, but we'll put it on the list
Mm-hmm.
when we get to it. Think about when you have a need.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a need, it is the only thing that you can think about, and you want it solved now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thankful when somebody helps you now at the time that you have the need. Consider that when you go to help someone else, that you may be doing okay, but that person that has the need, they are in serious trouble, and they are really, they have that desperate kind of thing happening, and they are just dying for somebody to give them a hand. Think of that, and don't, kick stones and shoot the breeze and stuff. Go right to the person and help.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about physical needs and spiritual needs. If you know somebody who's terribly weary, distressed, especially if they're not a believer, and you know that what they need is the Lord. When someone is really down like that, many times they're open to something else. So if you know that what they need is the Lord, they're not a believer, and they're distressed on what's tonight, Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait till Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. If they're distressed tonight and they're open to the gospel tonight,
Mm-hmm.
go to them tonight. Don't wait till Monday.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying?
Ella said many times the person has been in need a while, but they've been afraid or scared to ask for it.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, if they're starting to ask, many times that's a sign that it's getting really bad, really serious.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well,
but all that to say, don't hesitate. Go fast.
So she tells the
So
servants.
anyway, I'm sorry. I did that on purpose.
I know you did.
I love you. I love you.
So she tells the servants.
The rambler strikes again.
It wasn't a ramble. That was intentional. She tells her servants to go ahead. She's going to come after them. And it says that she didn't tell Nabal. Now, here's the deal. Every time I've heard this, I've heard people say like she was almost like she was keeping a secret from Nabal. But I don't read it that way, because here's my thought on it. So he was all the way in Carmel shearing the sheep. For her to tell him, because it doesn't seem like she didn't have the intention to tell him. Because she was going to tell him that night, but then he got drunk. So then she waited till the morning to tell him, right? She just didn't have the opportunity because she had to hurry up and meet David. She had to make a quick decision. There was no time to send somebody out to Carmel and say, hey, Nabal, what do you think about this? She just had to make it happen. And so she just made the decision. So I'm going to handle this, took care of it. And she didn't tell her husband. I think the only reason they mention here that she didn't tell her husband is because the important part of the story comes later when she actually does tell him. So this is just like the preface, in my opinion. This is just how I read it. This is like a preface to say she hadn't told him yet. Like all this was happening, he didn't know about it yet. But anyway, so then she gets on her ass and goes and rides down to meet David, who is coming her direction. And then they have this in the meantime situation. It tells you what David is thinking. So verses 21 and 22. So in David's mind, so you see what's happening over here with Abigail, and she's like getting everything together, and she's like get sending people on the horse. She on the donkeys, and she's getting on hers. She's following after him. She's gonna meet him in the way. And then you got David riding out, ready to kill people, and he's thinking in his mind, I have kept this man's stuff in vain, and he has requited me evil for good. And he's like, so God do to me, God do unto the enemies of David, if I leave anyone who's a man by morning light. Like he is fuming, he's furious, and she's riding out toward him. So this is like setting the scene, and we're at an hour. So I think we should stop there. Like I like the idea of leaving on a cliffhanger. Like you can say whatever you want. I'm just saying I don't want to go any further. But we're gonna they're just coming at each other, and David is furious, and she's riding her little donkey trying to meet him with the food. And don't you see how the Bible is like setting this scene and like making it a picture?
Yes.
Do you feel the tension?
I do, and we're ending it there. I guess we are at an hour.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fine with that. So let's review for a moment. Let me think. So starting with the Samuel thing. Okay. Remember, we talked about ministry. The one thing that I'll pull out of what we talked about Samuel, which I actually came up with it as we were talking about it, was the fact that Samuel had a direct line to Saul and David. And I just, it may shock you if you ever really get involved in people, with people, because the Lord will just put you right in the midst of it all. And you'll be talking to this person. And sometimes, in ministry, you just have an open ear, and you'll hear all this stuff. And then you'll go over to this person, you'll hear all this stuff. And your goal is not to just listen. Your goal is to lead them to the Lord. But many times it's a back and forth. But I just want to tell you that when you get involved in God's work, you're going to meet some characters. Yeah, that's a nice way of saying it.
That's a nice way of saying it.
But you really are. You really are. But always remember, the Lord loves all of them. He died for all of them. Every single person has value, and you need to talk to each and every one the same. Okay? Don't favor one over another. Every single person that you talk to in ministry, treat them as if they're the most important person in the world at that moment when you're talking to them, because the Lord loves them and wants them saved. You brought up Billy Graham. I brought up Billy Graham, and I'm not trying to boast on Billy Graham, but I remember someone said something about him one time, and I want to believe it's true. Hopefully it was. I think it was, but I thought, wow, that's something I want people to be able to say of me, and I want people to be able to say that of you. They said that the neat thing about Billy Graham was whether he was talking to a working class person or whoever was the president at the time, he talked to them all the same. He would go into the Oval Office and he would talk to the president in the same way he would go into any kind of an environment and just talk to like just a regular person. A Richard Beale,
Yes.
He would treat Richard Beale like the president like Richard Beale, kind of thing. And that's how we ought to be. Don't, and that's very biblical, because it's actually, the Bible condemns, favoring, when people come into your church.
It's James.
Yeah, right. When people come in your church, you're not supposed to cater to the uppity ups and put down, or don't, treat the lower class on the same level.
Trying to think of if I could quote it, because he said it's like saying to thou sitteth here in the good seat, and saith unto the other one, sit thou there on the footstool. That's what it says in James. You're not supposed to have preference and say you sit here and you sit over here.
Yep. And all that just to say, when you get into ministry, again, you're going to meet all kinds of people. You're going to talk to all kinds of people. Understand that all of them have value. Treat them all the same. They're all just people that need the Lord. What is the expression or the saying? Ministry is one beggar showing another beggar where to get bread. And talking about Jesus as the bread of life. The Bible, it can be referred to as bread. It's one beggar telling another beggar where to find bread. And just see that everyone has a need. So anyway, that's ministry. Then we talked about David and Nabel. what did I say earlier? When you don't acknowledge the blessings of the Lord in your life, and you just think it's all about you, you did it, it's all yours, and you refuse to include God in on it. I believe that's just as evil as we have Nabel's works here. If Richard Beale all of a sudden starts looking around at my life and saying, I did this, I did this, I did that, I did this, and I don't give God the credit, the glory, I don't even acknowledge his presence, it's evil. Those are the works of evil. Okay, folks, if you want to be right with the Lord tonight with a sincere heart, you better get to the place where you say, Lord, I'm here because you made me. Everything I have, you gave it to me. The air in my lungs, you're even beating my heart right now. I don't have a thing that didn't come from the hand of God. And it truly acknowledge that. I mean, it's a wise man, a wise woman who does that. Okay, it's a foolish person who says, it's mine, and I did this. Okay, because the Lord has a way of humbling us. He can take it away. Is what I'm saying. The Bible talks about that we need to humble ourselves. You know, the Lord actually gives us opportunity. We are told in the Bible to humble ourselves, you know, but if you get to the point that you will not, the Lord has a way of making sure you are humbled, kind of thing.
Well, he humbles Nabel.
Right. But the point that I want you to carry away with is that don't let it get to that point. Don't let it get to the point where the Lord has to humble you. You know, humble yourself. And again, I've said this before, humbling yourself is not just, it's not like self-mockery or putting yourself down like so many people think. It's just realizing how needy you are. Just realizing how much you need God. It's really between you and God. You know, it's not like between you and your wife and God. It's to humble yourself. It's really between you and the Lord. Lord, I'm your child. I'm a creation. You're my heavenly Father. You're the creator. You know, you don't need me, but I surely need you. And it's just realizing, like Peter sinking, calling out for Jesus to save him. That's really what it is. You realize that you are sinking without the Lord, and you just latch on to him and hold on to him each and every day. Like the woman with the issue of blood that reached out for the hem of Jesus's garment. And just every single day you're reaching out for the Lord. And that's really what it is. And I'm gonna sound biblical. Woe to the believer who doesn't feel or sense that he or she needs to reach out and latch on to the Lord each and every day. If you can get up tomorrow and live your whole day without latching on to the Lord for safety, for protection, for help, then that's a head scratcher. You know, and you're not, and see how long you go with that one. So that's not a threat. That's just a friendly truth warning, suggestion, not suggestion, but help, encouragement. That it's really between you and the Lord. Okay. So anyway, we could review more. Actually, I had an interesting thought that I was going to bring up.
Say it.
We didn't get there.
Oh, you were waiting to
you
get
closed it, so it's going to have to wait till tomorrow. The thought is about stuff we haven't covered.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to wait till tomorrow.
Baby, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm shocked we got through 22 verses. If I'm gonna be honest, I thought maybe we'd get through like 5 or 6. So I think we did pretty good tonight. I know y'all do too. All right. Alice said it was a very humbling message. All right, everyone. Well, do you want to pray?
But I will say this also. It's kind of interesting that you have the wife, you have Nabel, you have David.
Yeah.
The Lord's using David, but David's not perfect. You know what I like? That this is a situation in some ways is really a disagreement, a misunderstanding, of this or that, another, mingled with pride and arrogance and selfishness and all this kind of stuff. This is really drama. That it goes on each and every day, everywhere.
Yeah, it's real life.
It's all kinds of situations in life that you have the same character flaws happening. And you know what? In the midst of all the fallen drama
Mhm.
of sin, of arrogance, of pride, no humility,
Mhm.
the Lord is constantly working,
Mhm.
constantly giving grace and mercy.
Mhm.
Here's David, God's man,
Mhm.
heading to take care of Nabal with the sword.
Mhm.
And then Abigail comes.
Mhm.
I don't think that was coincidence.
Of course not.
That's the point that I'm making, and I'll make more of that tomorrow. I believe, the Bible talks about what in Isaiah about Isaiah standing in the gap.
Yeah.
Well, that was for a man, but here's a lady, a wife, standing in the gap, really saving, protecting the life of her husband.
We do that for our husbands all the time.
I appreciate that.
I
Every time,
I stand in the gap for you.
every single time there's a noise outside at night, I say, "Baby, there's somebody out there.
Well, I just mean with
Go on out there and check it out."
I just
I
mean
don't do
there are a
that.
lot of things
I
that
don't
I
do
do.
that. I get my bat and I take care of it.
A lot of things that
Don't
I
I?
do. Yes, you do.
I stand in
I
the
ain't
gap.
going out there.
You know something? I'm done with that. But have I prayed?
No.
I'll pray after this. But it's funny. We're talking silliness now. But sometimes there are noises at night, and sometimes I got to go outside because I look all left and right, and I realize that hey, I'm the man. I got to go. And there have been so many times that I'll walk out on that porch, and usually I'm so thankful for the cats. We got like 15 of them now, 12 or 15, and they're always hanging around.
Mm-hmm.
And but late at night when there's those thuds outside, those weird noises, and you think, what's going on? Somebody trying to get into this house? And I walk outside and I see those cats, and for a split second, usually I'm so thankful to have the cats, but I think, why couldn't y'all be a bunch of dogs, a bunch of teeth dogs that want to bark and protect? Do you know what I mean? Because I tell you what, in all seriousness, love the cats, but if there was a threat, they're just sleeping. They're not even gonna look. That's the nature of a cat. You can't even wake them up.
But if the cats are there, I know there's probably nothing going on. Because if there was something dangerous around, you'd know it.
I don't even know if that's true. We got some oddball cats.
Mom said, "You're the man, Rick. That's for sure." He does. I will totally give you credit for that. I never have to worry about that. He takes care of stuff.
I know I don't look like much, but I go outside every morning in the dark to go to work. There are bears in North Carolina.
There are.
Do you know every morning as I'm walking down the steps with my lunch, my thermos of coffee, my thermos of water,
Mhm.
I start cooking up a game plan in this head of how I'm going to take down a black bear. Because I'm always thinking there may be one by the car.
I hope not.
Do you know in my I'm half asleep, clearly not in my right mind, thinking as I'm walking to the car, this may be the morning, the day that I wrestle
A bear.
a bear, like old Crockett, Davy, a burr, and I'm always thinking, and you know what? I haven't cooked up a good plan yet. I keep thinking, well, just wing it, I keep thinking, how heavy is this thermos? That's why I always fill it to the brim, to the top, because I'm like,
hot
I gotta
coffee.
weigh this thing down.
You could take hot coffee and throw it on him.
Maybe I just offer him the coffee. Maybe he'll like it. Maybe I have a friend.
Anyway.
Maybe he's like Yogi.
Yeah,
he
he's the
likes-
king of the wild frontier.
Yeah.
That's Richard Beale.
I always ask the cats when I walk outside. I'll look at them and say, "Any bears out here? Anything been going on?" I try to get the rundown.
Yeah.
They've been out there all night. I say, "Have y'all seen anything?" And they always say, "You fine, you fine." Oh,
Go ahead and pray, man.
I know. I haven't prayed yet.
No.
All right, Lord, thank you for tonight, and I thank you for the passage that we read. We talked about being in ministry, Lord, and it's true that we'll meet all kinds of people when we start talking to people about the Bible, and I just pray that you'll help us have the words and know what to say each and every situation and time we get to talk to somebody. I pray that you'll use us in a great way. Lord, I pray that you'll use us in all the situations of life. Help us to be a peacemaker like Abigail. Help us to be able to seek to help and reconcile people. Help us to just live like our Savior. And we'll be so thankful for that. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. All right, everyone. Yeah, we do need sleep. We are headed to bed. You all have a good night. Come back tomorrow, and we will continue in 1 Samuel 25.
Yeah. I shouldn't have told that bear story, because some nights we will say that, we won't have a live event. Now I'm paranoid that one of these days somebody's going to say, "Wonder if a bear got him."
I'd let you know.
A bear got Rick.
I'd put it in the group. I'd say, y'all pray for Rick. He wrestled a bear today.
It was the bear. You think I'm joking?
Bear didn't like black coffee.
I know. Oh my! You do. You think I'm joking, but I cannot tell you how many mornings I've walked to that car, because we have a car and a van, and we park side by side, and there's always a gap. And I watched a YouTube video one time of a bobcat. Guy walking out to his car, and the wife starts yelling, and it was a bobcat or something underneath. And the guy, I remember the video that everybody talked, because he looked like a suburban guy kind of out in the neighborhood, but they talked about how brave he was. He just immediately hopped into action, grabbed the cat, the old bobcat, and ran it away, right? Didn't kill it. He just took it out of there, and they filmed it, and it was on the house camera or whatever. And I thought to myself, that's a man. And I just never considered bobcats or anything like that, although there's stuff like that around here too. But I always think bear, black bear and everything. And I'm like, you know what? That's David, you got rest the bear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you something. And not that I want any pride here, or any kind of commending or pat on the back or nothing. I don't want that. It would be nice to see the twinkle in your eye of my husband, the bear killer. But
do you see his twinkle?
I know, but you know what?
I know that you would.
I know
you don't need to actually do it.
I know what would happen. I'm just talking. You all can go to bed. I know what would happen. It would be the moment. The bear would be at the car, and he'd be like, "I've been waiting on you," and we would begin the wrestle. You follow? And I could almost see. You don't think this is prideful? I can almost see myself defeating the bear.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's seen it. and I can almost see the bear just limp off to the woods. And I'm like, cats, did you see that? And they won't even lift their head up. They're sleeping. I'm like, man, I'll go in the house, and you'd be like, what are you doing back home? I'm like, I wrestled the bear, and nobody would know. Because that's the kind of thing you want on YouTube.
No, it's not.
Oh man, I'm just being silly. I'm really losing people. Go turn it off.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
The bear.
Pray for Rick in the morning.
The bear wrestler.
He gets safely to the car. Thank you for joining us.
Yep.
We'll see you guys next time.
Good night, folks.
Bye.